Welcome to the Church Sound Podcast, part of the Repurpose Network, where kingdom culture, real life, and technology intersect. I'm your host, Prentice Thompson, and what we do? We talk to real people, pastors, leaders, engineers, tech people, manufacturers, worship leaders, all about church, technology, and provide solutions for a successful Sunday morning service. You ready? It's time to take a ride. Let's go. Yes. Welcome to another edition of the Church Sound Podcast. Man, I love it when the applause goes so smoothly. And I say this every week. Even though I did it myself, who cares? I make myself feel good about me. How about that? Listen, I have a great guest today. I have a super great guest. Before we get started, that's what I want you to do. I want you to like, subscribe, review, whether you're watching or you're listening. Listen, share this with somebody, copy the link, go to your message, open your phone right now. Open your phone, pull it out. Where's my phone? Pull this thing out and go to the message. Pull it out, go to the message and just send it to somebody and bless somebody with some information, because that's what we're here for. We should be provide solid information for churches so they can grow and have a successful Sunday morning service. I have a great guest today who's all about making Sunday successful. If I could say with my chin low, making Sundays successful. You gotta drop your chin when you say it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs of all ages, please welcome to the program my new friend, Josh Nassar.
Hey, what's going on, Prentice? Glad to be on the show.
Listen, I'm so glad that you took the invite. I just took a stab in the dark because I was watching your content. It started with the makeshift dolly.
Oh yeah.
I was
that one's kind of blowing up right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I said, oh, okay. Because they're the real ones are so expensive.
Oh yeah, they're pricey, man. I can't afford that.
Man, I was like, well, look at this guy. I'll say, maybe I can get him to be on the show. Maybe let's see if we can. So I'm so glad you responded, man. I'm excited to have you on the show. Like I said in our conversation before, we really focus on making sure small and mid-sized churches get this information, because the churches that really don't need all of it, all the big and the mega churches, because they're already doing it at such a high level. And with the cost of equipment now and with technology where it is now, things can become very affordable.
Yeah, for sure.
And still have it looking, amazing. So how did you get to this point in tech and church? What was your arrival point?
Yeah, I can jump into that. So, I've been in church my whole life. Growing up, I went to a mega church in Orlando, but never really did a lot of tech there. But then in college, I started playing keys at my church in our band. And when my wife and I moved out to Oklahoma City, started doing the same thing at our new church here. So I was in the band for a while. So, touched a little bit of tech, but it was mostly just playing music for the most part. But then, I was talking to my pastor one day and I said, I feel like I can jump into something else. Like, do we have anything else I can jump into? And he said, we're kind of thinking about starting live streaming, starting recording video, whatever. But, maybe just over the next year or so, kind of start looking into that, figure out what it is we need to do with it. We had that conversation in January of 2020. And then, 3 seconds later,
2020.
Yeah.
3
seconds later, it's like, oh, we need this today. So jumped into that with little to no experience there other than a love for tech. I forgot to mention this earlier. I am a software engineer by trade. So I am around tech all the time, but I had never really done much with live streaming and cameras specifically, even though it interested me. So yeah, started 2020, jumped in head first. And we've come a long way since then. I wouldn't say that we were in a great place there, but we've made a lot of strides. I've learned a lot, and I've got a lot of great people serving on my team now.
That's great. So let me ask you, because this is the great entry point, because a lot of churches really would start where you started, meaning that it's 2020. we got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
What were your first steps
Oh man,
initially?
luckily I had already done a little bit of research before COVID really took over, because we'd started having that conversation and I can't help myself, so I started looking into things. But um, man, my first early on, we weren't live streaming because everything was shut down. We just decided, hey, we're going to take this slow. Back up a little bit. We had also just moved into a new space in that same month.
Okay, that makes sense.
So my church is on a city block, and we had kind of outgrown our auditorium. So we started renting the theater that was next door. Our first service in there was in January of 2020.
Oh God,
And so um,
perfect timing. If not,
exactly.
oh
Exactly. It
gosh,
was crazy. And so all of a sudden we weren't able to meet in there. We weren't able to meet at all. And we needed to figure out what we were going to do when we were able to start meeting again. So in the interim, we were recording things on phones, editing them, uploading them afterwards, and not live streaming at all, keeping it pretty small, all while in the background we were kind of figuring out what we were going to do moving forward. And so I just dove headfirst into YouTube and anything else I could find online. And the pre-COVID world and the post-COVID world, as far as tutorials on church live streaming and church tech, are two very different places.
yes, it's definitely a BC and an AD. Yes,
Yeah. And so there was stuff out there, but a lot of it was like really old and outdated or way too expensive. There wasn't a lot of middle ground information to be had there. The one video that I stumbled upon that I think was more helpful than anything else I'd seen, if you know Ryland Russell, he's a
yes.
YouTuber,
Mm-hmm.
worship pastor out here in Oklahoma as well. He had a video going through his entire video setup, and I'm pretty sure he got blown up by so many people in those couple of months. But I learned a lot from those videos and kind of based a little bit off of that. For example, he mentioned his church uses the Panasonic G85s, and I was like, great, that seems like a good price performance. Let's get a couple of them. Well, also COVID was tough, so it was hard to get cameras. It was hard to buy
Yes,
anything. So,
yes.
but we piecemealed it together. So when we finally started meeting again in May or June of 2020, whenever that was, I think we had two G85s on tripods in the back of the room. We had an old Roland switcher that we had just kind of had in the building that we used for our projector, and we kind of borrowed that real quick. And then we were just recording things that we did on Sunday morning. No one was touching the cameras. No one was really hardly switching anything. It was just every once in a while we'd have a wide shot and a tight shot. And we did that for a while, and then it just kind of grew from there as we decided, hey, we want to actually do this live, and we want to make this a more true representation of what church is actually like here on a Sunday.
So let me ask you this, because a lot of cause I speak to a lot of churches, and when I go do visit and consult churches, I often try to explain to them is to try to bring the audience into the room,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a process to doing that to make someone feel like they're in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you started using just phones, how are you? Was that the challenge initially? Creating movement, all of the things that you know now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if I had to start it just using phones now, um, I don't know that I would try to live stream necessarily,
Mm,
because that gets a little more complicated. I know there are systems out there that will bring all the signals from the phones into a central hub, and then you can go from there. But honestly, like, I don't know that I would necessarily do that. I may just record on the phones and then stitch it together
stitch it
afterwards.
together later.
I think as churches, we hear this term live stream, and just it's almost like a buzzword and like a cool thing that it has to be live and it has to be at the same time church always is. But for us, and I think for a lot of churches out there, most people aren't even watching it live. They'll watch later in the day. They'll watch during the week. We get
Mm-hmm.
more of our views after the fact than we do right then and there. So if I had to start on phones, I may not do it live at all, because then I could record from a couple different angles, record in the full quality of the phone, not have anything compressed or anything after the fact, and just stitch it all together and go from there. It is a little bit more work in post, but like, it kind of depends on what your priorities there.
Right, right, right. So, what made you select the cameras? Other than the cameras is one thing. The
Mm-hmm.
glass is a whole other
Oh
other
yeah.
thing. I saw on your IG. this crazy. I think it was a 70 to 200 lens.
We've used one of those right now on our main follow cam. We've got a 150 to 600 from
Yeah, that's what it
Sigma,
was.
which is
Oh
wild.
man, I was like, where are they on the moon with that shit? Like,
Yeah, so you know the Panasonic G85s that we're using are a micro four thirds camera, which means
right.
that there's a crop, which means all of your lenses are going to reach a little bit farther than what they say. I think it's like 1.6
Mm-hmm.
times what the focal range is effectively, and so that's been awesome because our room is kind of long. I think a lot of churches these days are fairly wide. Ours is very long, and we didn't really have a good spot to put the main follow cam that wouldn't block a lot of people just
Gotcha.
based on the room layout. And so we have to have it, not have to, but we like to have it way far back in the room. And so for a while, we were using I think Lumix, I think Panasonic Lumix has a 100 to 300, which
Mm-hmm.
with that crop ends up being more like a 2 to I don't know what that math works out to, but it's pretty long. But it's a micro four thirds lens, and so the quality isn't amazing. The focus on it was almost impossible, so we had to use like a push button autofocus, which was just
Ooh,
not great. It was fine, but not amazing. And so, and most of our cameras, we've been using just micro four thirds lenses for a while, but you know you can only get so far with those. And so also planning for the future, they've come out with a lot more micro four thirds lenses that are really nice, that are fast lenses. But if I'm thinking ahead, we're not going to be on micro four thirds forever, right? If I upgrade cameras, we're not on that anymore, and I don't want to
right.
spend $1,000, $2,000 on a lens that's stuck on this system. So
Exactly.
instead, I'm thinking, well, you know, you look at red komodos, for example, you're able to use I think RF lenses on those.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not getting RF lenses, but we are going and
Get
buying EF
EFs.
lenses
EFs,
and
right.
adapting those to the micro four thirds. And so, yeah, on our cameras on stage, we've got Sigma 18 to 35s on those, which are awesome, awesome EF lenses for the price. And so that back follow cam though was always tricky because it needed to be able to push in really tight and still look halfway decent. And so I decided to try out this Sigma 150 to 600, and it does a job. And it probably sits most of the time right in the 750 to 800 mil neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
effectively, you know,
Gotcha.
to get kind of that half body shot of like our lead vocals or our pastor as he's preaching. It can go a little tighter than that, but we don't use it there.
So using like you use like a speed booster, like a micro four
Yeah,
thirds to EF mount.
yeah. So that one, we're using Viltrox adapters on all of them. Some
Okay.
of them are speed boosters, some of them don't have any glass in them, so it's just an adapter
Mm-hmm.
purely. And so that one does have a speed booster on it, so it does bring that crop down a little bit. So it's not, you know, it's not double. It's not 300 to 1200.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being something to like 840 or something. I think
Right.
is
Right. Right.
effectively what it gets to.
Right. 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 The color on it look great from what I saw.
Yeah, I tried out a couple other lenses. I think one from Tamron, and I don't remember the other. And I just didn't love them. But this one, I don't know. It looks pretty good to me. It matches our other cameras well. The focus on it is pretty easy to use. Like the zoom is pretty smooth, even though the lens, you know, gets out freaking huge. But yeah. And for $1,000, I'm like, look, you know, people might have problems with using third party lenses. They might have problems with using a lens that's like that slow. It's like an f5. Um, but you know, from that far away for what we need it for, it really fit the bill.
The thing is, a lot of times when I'm talking to people about cameras, they always think that the best lens is what comes with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh yeah, so the lens had something the 54 to 80, whatever it is, and you look at it, it's like, wow, this thing's really blurry. Like you can't tell. It's like,
Yeah.
so I will also often tell churches, say, listen, like put aside money for your glass because the thing that changes all the time is the camera.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that remains consistent is the glass.
Yeah.
So this way you can have your look be consistent, and what you're doing is you're shaping your look.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And you know, we used the kit lens that came with the G85s for a while. It's a 12 to 60 comes with it, and it's a neat little lens, and it did a pretty good job. But as we decided, hey, we want these images to be a little sharper, we want a little bit more of that depth of field, we're going to have to break into this and spend a little bit more money on some lenses. But again, with that future in mind of we're probably not going to be on these Micro Four Thirds systems forever.
Right.
And we can be on them a while. I mean, these cameras at this point have lasted us 4 years and they're still going strong. And, we get them used for like $350 or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. You don't need to spend a ton on your camera. You can. And I mean, I'm not going to say I'm getting the same picture as I would on a red Komodo,
Mm-hmm.
but for the difference in price, the percentage of price, I'm super happy with what we're getting.
So, what was your challenge with? Did you have any challenges with getting audio to your stream? Like, how and what were you? I see the smirk. Like, what? What were you
Audio's
guys
been
doing?
audio's been a journey. Remember earlier I mentioned we're meeting in a theater that we don't own. But the audio setup is theirs. They do concerts and all sorts of shows there. So we actually come in and use their soundboard and we use their PA and stuff. But we hook it into all of our video gear. All of the video gear is ours. And so that created a challenge from the get go of, a lot of people, they're able to play with their mix, mess around with it during the week, and then figure out what it is going to be on Sunday. And that way they can really dial it in. Well, we're going in there on a Sunday morning and we're streaming in, 2 hours. It's like, all right, we got to get this where it needs to be. And so it was kind of a struggle at first. I think we started out, we just used the main front of house mix. We just piped that over to our ATEM and streamed that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Over the years, we've adjusted to using a post fader mix bus that, excuse me, we have somebody mixing and adjusting on an iPad, but they're
So
still
you
in
have
the
an
room.
aux feed, so
Uh
tin
huh.
cans and like,
Yep. They're still in the room though, and it's kind of loud, and so it's not easy to mix that.
ooh
Um,
man.
which is just it's tough, but we've gotten it to a pretty good place where week to week it stays pretty much the same with a couple small adjustments depending on
Mm-hmm.
who's in the band that day, how they're playing, who's mixing, how things are going. And what we do is we mix during rehearsal, we record it, we listen back to it after rehearsal, and if there's any small tweaks we need to make there, we make them, and we do the best we can. So our mix isn't like, there's a little bit of variance week to week. It's not perfect. I think it could sound better if we had the ability to kind of play around with it during the week, or have our own completely separate mix that wasn't just like a post fader. But we work with what we've got, and I think it sounds pretty good.
So if you were, let me ask you a question. If you were a small church and you wanted, and that church say wanted, say 2 cameras, 3 cameras tops, say 2 cameras,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Um, Adding lighting as well. You got to figure that
Mm-hmm.
in. What would be your starting point? You think?
Like what would I buy first,
What
or
would you buy first? Yeah.
well, I mean, if you're gonna have to have two cameras, lighting is going to make your image look better, but at some point you need to buy cameras and know what your image is going to look like from the starting point. So I would probably figure out kind of the cameras and lenses I needed in order to actually get started, what fit in my budget. um, and then I would go from there. I'd set them up, I'd see, how does this look, how much can we fix this in the camera, and how much do we feel like we need to add or remove light to fix this. Then I would figure out the lighting situation that I needed for that, buy whatever lights we needed. Because again, I think in church we have so many examples of churches that look amazing, broadcast wise. You've got your Bethels, your Elevations, your Hillsong, whoever,
Mm-hmm.
um, and sometimes that's what we see, and we just think we have to look like that, and that's not true. We don't, you know. And so even though, yeah, this image may not look the best, like we maybe need more fancy lights to actually make this look as good as theirs. It doesn't have to look as good as theirs. It needs to look pleasing to the eye enough to watch, for your members and whatever it is you're trying to do. So I don't think you need to get crazy right off the bat. I think buy the camera or two that you need, set it up, and then go from there, figuring out what you need to do to adjust it.
So how did training go? I know I'm jumping around a little bit,
Yeah, no,
but
it's fine.
um, because oftentimes it's you have one person or two people that kind of know what they're talking about, or maybe
Hmm.
could be, and then everyone else doesn't know anything,
Yeah,
right? Because they're
yeah,
just here to serve.
yeah.
What was the training process for your team, and how did you implement that?
Yeah, that's an ongoing journey for sure. You know, I think it's good because right at the beginning I was training myself too because I didn't really know what I was doing, and so I benefited a lot from just watching a lot of other streams online, seeing what I could consume and see what I liked about it, what I didn't. Those uh, churches that would post like their production multi views. Like I know Bethel does that. I watched so many of those during that time, trying to think of like, hey, what are they doing? What are all their different cameras doing during this? How are they capturing this? Um, and not that we need to be exactly like Bethel, but it was a good starting point for me. And so from there, yeah, we grabbed a handful of people right at the beginning, right when we started, who said, "Yeah, I'd be willing to serve here." I don't think any of them had ever touched a, you know, actual physical camera before, after the year, 2005. Um, Back when, point and shoots were all the rage.
Right.
Everyone had one in their back pocket. Um, so, we all had to kind of train from the beginning. And I think we've kind of just started from the bottom and worked our way up. So again, early on, we had those cameras just sitting on tripods and not really getting touched. As people kind of learned, these are the camera settings. This is what they do. After that, as we've kind of advanced, I would find things online, and I'm saying, "Hey, let's look at this shot and let's kind of work at what would it take for us to do that." And I would work on it together with people. So now I have a core group of volunteers who, even though they never really used cameras before, have kind of grown into this role alongside me, alongside the rest of the team, to where now we're doing a pretty good job. But when I have new people join, now I have a backlog of live streams I can point to and say, hey, you see that? Go watch some of those. And I've got some, production multi views I can point to and say, hey, go look at those. And now it's not pointing to Bethel and their style, it's pointing to us and our style and saying, this is how we do things. And then obviously you can't just show somebody a live stream and say, here's a camera, do it. Um, when people sign up to serve on their first week, they're just training and shadowing. They don't do anything. They come in early. I show them the whole camera. I hand them a camera. We walk through the different positions. I walk through the different types of shots we get. And we might do that 2 or 3 times before they actually serve on a full Sunday morning. And then once they do start serving, it's kind of just constant learning and training. We rehearse with the band in the morning. So everybody sees the songs that are happening. We practice different shots. Some mornings we're doing like a live cut during rehearsal and just really going through the motions. Some mornings it's more of just, hey, let's practice that shot again. Let's do that again. Let's do that again. Let's practice that transition in order to get people where they need to be.
Great, great. So, for as far as directing, are you primarily directing and training directors at the same time?
Yeah, so I'm definitely our main director at this point. I've got 2 other guys who have done it a handful of times. For example, I just had to travel out of the country for a few weeks, and so I 3 or 4 weeks in a row I was not even in the building, not even in the country, and so had some people running things, and they've gotten their reps growing up. And directing is a hard position for us to train, um, because the only time that we ever have everything set up is on a Sunday morning, and so the
Oh,
way
I
that
get
we
it.
train that, yeah, it's tricky. So the way that we train that, usually I'll have them come in, I'll walk them through all the gear and just be like, this is what everything does, and I'm gonna just overload your brain with all of this, but this is it. You need to know where all these things are if you're gonna do this. Um, and then I have them kind of shadow me as we direct rehearsal. Um, and then right off the bat, I ask if they have any questions, just, lots of questions. But then I'm also talking through, why I'm taking a shot at a particular time or why I'm speeding up or slowing down and kind of talking to them about how we want to show the energy of the room. We really want to show what's happening in the room to somebody that's online. And after that, honestly, it's usually, hey, maybe next week you come in and you'll direct during rehearsal, right? And maybe you'll do that a handful of times. And then maybe after a few times of that, you'll direct this one song on a Sunday morning, and then kind of filtering in that way because I can't just say, oh, we're having rehearsal during the middle of the week. Here, come direct that and learn how to do it. Or,
Mm,
hey, we have youth group during the week. Come do that. Like, we don't have any of that going on. And so it is a little bit tricky, but we figure it out. And now that I'm got those multi-view recordings and the comms and stuff with all of that, I can also send them that ahead of time and say, hey, this is what it looks like right up from the top. This is exactly what it looks like to direct. Is this something you're even interested in and you feel like would be fun? I think that's a big thing that maybe sometimes people miss out on is I think for directing especially, like, you have to think it's fun. You have to think it's interesting. Otherwise,
Hmm.
I don't think you're going to be good at it.
Right, right, right. So let me ask you, what? How many shots are you guys having for your system? Like, what switcher are you guys using? Which ATEM are you guys using?
So we have an ATEM Constellation, one of the new ones, the 2ME. When that came out like a year or two ago, I was like, "That's we gotta get one of those," because we were running a PC running vMix before, which was fine. It was
Ooh.
filling our needs.
Hmm.
Um, and then that came out, and at the price point, I was like, "Yes, please." Um, but so we can have, it's got 20 inputs or something, but on a Sunday morning we actually have 4 cameras in the room. We have our main follow cam, we've got that dolly cam that you mentioned earlier, and then we have 2 handheld cameras on the stage.
So how did you build the dolly cam?
So I can't take full credit for it. I definitely found a YouTube video of somebody making something very similar. um, Specifically, they were building it for, like like actual filmmaking, not necessarily live production stuff.
It's the
And
same
so
thing.
yeah, yeah, all related for sure. So I kind of took that and just adapted it a little bit to our specific needs. And our space is very specific in that it has these big railings at the front of each section, um, that are perfect to kind of set this
Oh,
up on
give you
and
some
clamp it
space.
down to.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
didn't actually need to figure out any kind of stands or anything like that, which wouldn't have been necessarily super complicated, but would have been
But
more
that's a big
bulk.
issue when you're
Yeah,
trying to get height. Height is a whole other thing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of spent some time in my garage, put that thing together, brought it in on a Sunday morning. I didn't tell anybody. I don't necessarily recommend that, but here we are. Sometimes I like to ask forgiveness rather than permission. It's worked out okay. Um, Set that thing up. Everyone looked at me real weird, and I was like, just wait, just wait. Threw a camera on it, and I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves. I think it gets some really good shots.
Bringing motion into a shot. I'm a cinematographer, so I understand everything you're saying. But when you add motion, it adds so much character as opposed to just static shots
Hmm.
because it just brings so much life to the visual.
Yeah, yeah,
Y-
100%. We make sure that we've got motion at some level on every single camera that we have in the room. And again, I think that's maybe a slightly, newer style for church broadcasts. But I definitely think it looks really good.
And I love dolly shots. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh, he's using what is he using for the rails?" I'm like, my mind is going because I'm like, I should go to Home Depot. I should go pick some of that stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, I think altogether I spent like $100 on it, give or take. And it's like a
Wow.
10, 12 foot. I don't remember exactly the measurements, but it gets some distance. Because you can get some cheap sliders on Amazon, but
Hmm.
I mean cheap, but it'll be like $150 and it'll go 4 feet. You know, um, this is 3 times that distance at less cost.
So
So
so the slider is 12 feet.
yeah, give or take. I think it's 12 feet. Don't quote me. I haven't
That
measured in a long
is,
time.
man. That but the amount of shots you can create from it
Hmm.
is because you can have so many different angles, even if you don't move it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Y-
and it's not moving in every single shot, but it gives
Right.
the op the ability to find the angle they need, or everyone loves those shots of people having their hands raised. You shoot through the hands and whatever, and they get a wide swath of area to kind of find that shot.
What was the pastor's reaction to that when he saw the because
Uh,
that
I mean, I think he loved it once he saw the results of the shots. When he saw me carrying it in week number 1, and I hadn't yet painted it black, so it's just this white PVC. I think he was a little hesitant, but I think I'm lucky to have a pastor who empowers people and put some trust in me and said, "All right, I trust you. Like, make it work." But I also know that if it had looked bad, like, it would not be coming back in.
So what do you think is the future moving forward for of church production, if you will, online? Um, what do you think the future is?
Man, I don't know. I feel like I haven't been in this space long enough to even hardly know what the present is, much less the future.
Let me tell
But
you this. Let me tell you this before you even start. I'm looking at your content, right? Your content and your visuals are so much better than other, not even churches. I'm
mhm.
talking about just visually. So this is natural for you. I'm telling you because
Thanks.
I know people who do this for a living and they can't capture what you capture.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
your eye.
yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I definitely think, yeah, I think it's a ton of fun, and I think that helps me do a little bit better about it. But honestly, I know this sounds crazy, but everything that I feel like I'm seeing in the world, we were getting to this point where we want cameras to be more and more high quality, right? Like more megapixels, but 4K, whatever it is, whether it's on your phones, wherever it is, like more and more quality. But I also feel like, some of the younger people rising up, Gen Z, it's almost like, no, we want it to be more real. We don't care about the quality. It needs to be real, right? Almost to the point where people are intentionally blurring photos, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know that that's necessarily coming next for church broadcast, but I can't say that it's not. If people are liking this and there's still images and in their pictures that they're posting every single day, I can't imagine why this would be exempt as those same people start getting into these positions and serving in this way. So, I know a lot of people are talking about, we're getting this stuff into the metaverse, or we're doing, virtual reality church. I almost see like maybe this is going the opposite direction. Maybe
Mm.
it is actually we're streaming off of a couple of phones that people are holding, and it's way more like point of view, like you're actually in there. I
Hmm.
don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? I'm not going to start doing a live stream on a phone anytime soon. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be shocked if that happens.
You know what I think's going to happen? Kind of like the POV thing is kind of what I think's going to happen because I'm looking at like NBA games, right? And imagine you can sell a seat.
Mm-hmm.
You got the goggles on, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you're courtside,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you can see everything courtside. It's like it's right in front of you.
Yeah.
That's what I think's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're definitely on our way there. I mean, especially with all the tech that's coming out. But
Yeah, all the tech that's coming out because like the headsets like $200-300, and
yeah.
like and then all the content you see around the headsets.
Mm-hmm.
People like I tried it on one time. I right when COVID happened, I was working at B&H,
Mm-hmm.
so I was selling all the gear to churches.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was the church guy,
Yeah.
and I trained the staff in audio. So I was the church guy,
Yeah.
and they had a training on VR, and I almost killed myself because because it looked so real.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like it's like you're immersed.
Yeah.
That's what I think's going to happen, um, because it's not going to be very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, it's not going to be very expensive. So if you had a budget of 5,000, say
Mhm.
you had $5,000,
All right.
um, I want to start my live stream in my church. What are you buying?
All right. Let's think about this and how much things cost right off the top of my head. At that price point, I would say for a switcher, I'm probably going A10 Mini Pro. Right. That's what are those $400 now? Like they're
Three
crazy cheap.
hundred, because I
Oh,
have I
there you
have
go.
one right there.
There you go. There you go. $300, right? Um, oh man. And then just for let's say consistency, because I know it, we'll use the G85s, the Panasonic G85s, and let's say we're buying those used. Because honestly, like cameras at that level, like buy them used. You can get great cameras used.
Yes.
Um, so let's say those are 350 a piece when you buy them used. Let's buy two of them. All right, that's $700. That gets us to $1,000. Um, am I assuming I've got audio already? Like I've got a board, I've got a mixer.
We're just doing video,
Okay,
just
great,
video,
great,
because audio we're going to run it from the aux, and that's going to
great,
be it.
great. I'll just throw in, let's say $1,000 for tripods and cables and stuff, right? So we're at 2,000, and then honestly, I'd probably spend that last 3,000 on lenses. Um, get a couple of adapters for 150 bucks, and then that leaves us $1,500 or so for two lenses. Um, depending on where I'm setting up the cameras, I would imagine if I'm doing two, they're probably just on tripods. I've probably just got two in the back. One's kind of a wider shot, one's a tighter shot. I may put one somewhere else in the room, kind of to maybe cover both of those. And And let's say, I don't know. I mean, depending exactly where they are, I might get a 24 to 70 and then a 70 to 200 if I can figure out those in the budget. And I mean, that's $5,000 right there, and that'll kind of cover it. Now, granted, I didn't talk about headsets or anything like that, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll scale back on the lenses a little bit right at first, and we'll throw in a couple of either some of the cheap Hollylands or ear techs because I think they'll get the job done. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is I'm getting an A10 Mini Pro because I'm going to stream and record straight from that, and I've got 4 inputs. Let's assume one for Pro Presenter, so that gives me 3 cameras. I mean, and for $300, you're not wasting any money there. That's just that'll grow
Yeah.
with you. You can
Yeah.
use that the rest of your life
Yeah.
for all sorts of things. I mean, we stream off of an A10 Mini today. We use the Constellation for our switching, but we actually stream from the A10 Mini that we have sitting next to it. So, yeah, I think that's the big thing.
That is a good way to start, especially with buying cameras. Like I often tell people, it's like you'll buy cameras used, and even if you want to try to get some interesting shots, like say you find a used camera, you got an extra slot, and you want to get a multicam view,
Mm-hmm.
do that because
Yeah,
it adds more character.
yeah,
Get like a old lens to
yeah,
add more character to your shots. Like what you're trying to do is create character, and every church isn't cookie cutter, And I think a lot of times churches try to shoot for what they see instead of creating who they are.
yeah, yeah. And also, like, this is hot take from Josh, but um, I don't think that you necessarily need to have all these servos and whatever making your cameras as easy as possible for volunteers to use. I think we need to spend more time training people up to use them.
Yeah,
I think there's a level of, yeah, this shouldn't be impossible for somebody to figure out, but like at some level we gotta take some responsibility and train some people, and they
yeah,
need to use the cameras and learn how to use it, and you're gonna
yeah,
end up getting better shots for it.
yeah. And I say all the time, you have to get dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's no other way around it. You have to get dirty, and the reason is because it's going to be a time they're going to need you on this camera,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to need you here,
Yeah, I mean,
and they're going to need you there.
and I compare it to the worship team all the time. You're not someone's not walking in and you're handing them an electric guitar and saying, "Hey, don't worry, you just need to press the buttons on it and it'll just play perfectly for you." Like we expect them to learn how to play the guitar. We expect them to have their own guitar.
Right.
Like why is this different? This is just as a creative outlet, just as important of a way to serve. And so I expect people to kind of lean in, and I want people on my team who are willing to lean in and want to go that extra mile.
So what made you do your IG page? Like what was it? What
You
was
know,
the
that just
thought
kind
behind
of
it?
followed the YouTube channel. Like I've got a YouTube channel, and that was kind of the main thing originally, and then just started posting on Instagram just to create some traction, and seems like it did. But kind of the whole idea is, just like I learned things from Ryland, and other people that I found on YouTube, I felt like I had a little bit of knowledge to offer, having grown, up in this, from zero to where we are now, that I feel like looks pretty good. And our whole live stream costs less than $15,000, which I know is not a zero amount of money, but is also like very small compared to a lot of churches out there and what they're
Yes.
spending on their
Yes.
broadcasts. Um, and so, and I know a lot of that is because I was taking the time to learn and invest and put into it. But I also know a lot of the stuff I learned through experience and hard work and whatever. And so being able to share that with people and show like, hey, you don't have to spend $100,000 to get a good looking live stream. There are ways to save money on this. There are ways to have creative solutions to things in order to save money, because we're always trying to do that. So, I just thought it'd be, and I thought it would be kind of a fun way to um, myself. I'm always trying to learn. So I thought having a YouTube channel and learning about more about YouTube and more about video making would be kind of a fun challenge. And so I've been doing it for about a year now, and I've gotten messages from people that have found my stuff helpful, and that's super rewarding and super fun.
Hey man, listen, I really enjoy watching you. I enjoy your narration because it's so spot on because you can see it. Not
Mm-hmm.
only that, I mean mentally, not
Mm-hmm.
just visually. It's like you're explaining as you go, and I thought it was really impactful. So, what's your YouTube channel?
It's just same as my Instagram, called Budget Church Live Streaming. It's exactly what it is. We're doing church live streaming on a budget.
Great, great, great. All right, so before we get out of here, We do this game called 30 Seconds and Gone. True, false, yes, no questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think so. Let's do it.
You know what? It would be great if I hit the right cue. It would be great. There we go. All right. Here we go. Are you ready, sir?
I think so. Let's do it.
Okay. Favorite cereal as a child?
Reese's Puffs.
First one. I've never heard that one. Never heard that one. Never heard that one. Okay. First song you learned on your instrument?
It was called Lazy Lion on the piano.
Lazy Lion. Okay. Who is your favorite worship leader?
That's hard. I like Chris Brown from Elevation.
Okay. So, if you had to pick a cartoon, what would it be?
Arthur.
Wow.
Big Arthur guy.
Arthur?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in your state, what is the capital?
Oklahoma City.
There it is.
Right where I am.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs of all ages, I'd like to thank my good friend. And they're clapping for you.
Man.
And
How about it? How about it?
You know, it just kind of works out. It just kind of works out. Hey, listen, thanks so much. So it's build. I'm gonna make sure I got it right for your contact information.
Yeah, just Budget Church live streaming.
Budget Church live streaming. Hey, you guys go check out his content on IG. Check out his content on Instagram, and I know you guys will be blessed. I'm gonna say, like I always say, keep God first in everything you do. I'll see you next time on the Church Sound Podcast.